Hello, welcome to this month's Urban and Community IPM webinar on improving professional ant control services. We are grateful to have presenting today Dr. Dong-Hwan Choe. Choe is a cooperative extension specialist and professor in the Department of Entomology at University of California, Riverside. Choe got his bachelor's degree in agriculture from Korea University and his master's and PhD in entomology from University of California, Riverside. His research program focuses on three major areas: urban entomology, insect behavior, and chemical ecology. In particular, Choe's research has focused on exploring innate and learned behaviors of economically and environmentally important insect species to develop more effective integrated pest management programs. Choe has also organized the UCR Urban Pest Management Conference, as well as the UCR Fumigation School. I'd like to welcome Dr. Choe. You're now welcome to share your screens and begin your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. As introduced, I'm working as a professor and cooperative extension specialist at UC Riverside. My expertise includes ants, bedbugs, and termites. Today, I'm going to talk about ant control and our efforts to improve professional ant control services in residential settings in California. Ants are important urban insect pests. According to recent nationwide survey that was conducted by this magazine, Pest Control Technology, most of the pest management professionals and companies throughout the nation provide some sort of ant control services. So that means the ants are recognized as important pest by residents in urban settings, but also it's important component for this urban pest management industry. The ants are common issues, but at the same time, the ants are not very easy pest to control and to the satisfactory level. There's a concept called callbacks in pest management industry, particularly for urban pest management, which means that when the customers are not happy, they can call back to the company and says, oh, I still see insects, even after you guys come out and make applications or some kind of treatments. Then the company have to go back and make additional follow-up treatments free of charge. So that's a callback. If you look at this survey findings from 2020, you can see the ants is listed as the pest that has highest callback rates compared to other common urban pest insects. It showed about 6% callback rate, and which is higher than callback rate for termites, bedbugs, and even cockroaches. So that kind of indicates that the ants are difficult to control up to satisfactory level perceived by the customers. In California, especially in urban and agricultural settings, Argentine ants are common ants. And in fact, if you go to southern part of California, Argentine ants are, the most common ants you may encounter. And as a result, these ants are important pest species of ants that are treated by pest management professionals as well. Speaking of the means of control and management for this type of pest ants, insecticides are still the most commonly adopted strategy to control those. Sanitations and exclusions and vacuums, all these non-chemical strategies or preventive methods are used, but much less frequently than pesticide applications. By saying pesticide, we're talking about various types of bait and various types of sprays and also granular insecticides. If you hire pest control companies to treat for the ants, one of the tools they're gonna start using or most likely to adopt and use for ant control is the insecticide spray. And there are many different types of insecticide sprays on the market. And one of the reasons that the insecticide sprays are so commonly used by professionals is its ease of application and also relatively low cost. And if you think about the areas that are commonly infested by ants, especially outdoors, there are so many other things that the people have to pay attention to when they're making treatments. There are stuff around the house, there are vegetations around the house. So considering all those complex structures and the the surface types, the the spray really provides some advantage. One of the issues that are related to widespread use of spray type insecticides for ant control is its potential runoff and contamination of the water system, especially the surface water system in California. So a lot of these insecticidal compounds are consistently detected in the surface water system throughout California. And many of these insecticidal compounds that are detected in the water are also found in the spray product that are targeted for outdoor insect pests, including ants in urban settings. So there are some chemical names here: imidacloprid, bifenthrin, fipronil, permethrin. They're all commonly found in various types of spray products targeting ants. When these type of spray insecticides are applied in soils and other areas around the house, some of those insecticides will get into the dirt or soil particles, and those soil particles can be moved around by the wind or water, or sometimes the insecticidal compound itself can be easily dissolved in the water, and then it can be washed off from the original location the spray was applied. So as you can see in this photograph here, this type of runoff can be quite common, especially when the sprinkler waters are not really contained in the vegetated area and just running off from that site and then getting into the storm drain. So once the water gets into the storm drain, those are not going to be processed or filtered or anything. So it can directly go into the surface water system, contributing the contamination of the surface water with insecticidal compounds. So there has been a lot of regulatory requirements and other efforts that pest management professionals have been trying to really reduce this type of insecticide runoff. So one of the effort was reducing the rate of the insecticides that can be applied. So one of the insecticide that is commonly used for ant control is a fipronil spray. The usual rate that professionals used to be able to use was 0.06%, but now that rate has been reduced to 0.03% as a part of effort to reduce this type of insecticide contamination in surface water. But recently, based on our research, we found out that this low rate of insecticide spray sometimes do not provide consistent ant control. So here this graph kind of shows that findings here. We identify 5 different houses in California, in downtown Riverside. We monitored the ant activity, which was Argentine ant, in those 5 houses before making any type of applications of insecticides. And then we made this 0.03% fipronil application around the house. And then we monitored an activity again after that applications. What we found was that some of the houses got reductions of ant activity a little bit, but some others actually had higher activity level even after the 0.03% fipronil spray applications. And then the N numbers went up so high in some cases, even after that initial application. So a lack of this consistency was something that we found from this field trial. If this type of things happen in the real life, this may result in upset customers, and then it will result in callbacks. And some of those callbacks will result in repeated applications of insecticide sprays around the houses. So in our recent project, we call it Ant IPM Alliance Project, we decided to recruit pest management professional companies to develop and implement the low impact IPM strategies that works, but at the same time that will reduce the level of contaminations and our reliance on repeated use of insecticide sprays. So in this particular project, we encouraged the participating pest management professionals to adopt 2 biorational pest control approaches. The first one is the use of pheromone adjuvant. The second one was the use of bait. These strategies, these 2 biorational strategies, were expected to improve the precision and accuracy of our control methods targeting insect species, especially in this case, Argentine ants. In this diagram, you're looking at the increase of precision if you go from bottom to the top, and you see the increase of accuracy if you move from left to right. The precision is defined as a degree of reproducibility of the outcome. So if we get the high precision, that means we reduces the variabilities between our treatments. We always get consistent outcomes. Accuracy is defined as the degree of closeness to the true target, in this case, our target species. So accuracy is about how close we are to the target we're trying to control. If we can get high precision in our control strategy, we can achieve high efficiency. We get consistent outcome every single time. And if we can achieve the high accuracy, we will increase the target specificity of our control strategy. The bait is inherently more target-specific approach in controlling ants, because when we apply bait, toxic bait in this case, the ants gonna consume it, and then the toxicant will stay inside of the target insects. And then ants will share it with other nest mates eventually. I'll get to that more in the later slides. And so the insecticides will stay inside of target species, which is the important indication of high target specificity. Pheromones can help to lure the insect into the insecticide treated areas. For example, let's say this target is our Argentine ant population that we want to control or manage. And let's say we spray this area. So this spray application or whatever insecticide application is not really inside of our target, right? But if our insecticide application contains pheromone component, and if the pheromone component is effective in terms of luring the targets to the location where we applied insecticidal bait or spray, then it will increase the target specificity. So if we use pheromones, it will increase higher efficiency and also target specificity. Let's get into the pheromone part a little bit. As you can see in this video clip, the ants are chemically oriented animals. These are thick ant trail. This is actually Argentine ant trail that I find in the university building. These are about maybe 2-inch wide ant trail moving from point A to point B for something. They're probably migrating or they're foraging. But what they do here is that they're following their pheromone trails. They're deposited by their nestmates. They're not really following visual cues or anything like that. For Argentine ant, this trail pheromone is well understood. Some people call it aggregation factor because this compound is very effective in terms of luring and making the ants aggregate to a certain area. This aldehyde compound with this molecular structure can be easily synthesized in the laboratory settings. The ant actually produce this compound in minute quantity in very specialized gland they have in their abdomen. And ants are extremely sensitive to this compound. So if we apply this chemical or synthetic trail following pheromones in a line on clean filter paper like this, the ants will follow that line without any mistakes. And the concentration where ant responds to this chemical is very low. So our human nose are not going to be able to detect this compound at that level. So idea was the attract and kill. We lure the insect using pheromones, and then we put this lure in the same location with insecticidal compound, whether spray or bait. So we lure the insect to the location, we put some type of control strategy, control methods to maximize the outcome or efficacy. This idea has been tested by large pest management companies, and what they found was pretty encouraging. They found by incorporating these pheromones in their insecticide spray, they were able to reduce their callback rate significantly. The callback is something that everybody wants to reduce. Customers don't want to see, the pest issues even after initial application of some kind of control method was done. And also the company, the callback, too many callbacks will cause a quite significant financial burden for professional pest management companies. By reducing callback, we can reduce the unnecessary applications of insecticide applications. Let's move on to the bait part. Adult ants are basically liquid feeders. The adult ants, their bodies, their special organs they have, their certain systems they have in their alimentary canal, make them really extremely well adapted to the liquid type food. Those liquid can be water-based liquid, or it could be oil. Depending upon the ant species, some will prefer water-based liquid, and the others will prefer oil-based liquid. So in the case of Argentine ant, they are naturally adapted to honeydew that is produced by various types of plant-feeding insects, such as aphids and scales and honey um, and mealybugs. In this picture, you're looking at the Argentine ant obtaining honeydew from citrus mealybug. And that's why these adult ants are naturally adapted to liquid type food, in this case, water-based sugary liquids. In the case of fire ants, though, what they prefer is actually oil rather than sugary liquid. This picture is taken in my backyard. I once had pretty large sized fire ant colonies in my backyard. So I gave them a peanut butter. So this is right after I gave them a peanut butter. What they're doing is they're licking and imbibing the oil from the peanut butter. And overnight, what happens, they're going to take all the oils out of this peanut butter, leaving this crumbles of peanut butter pieces in a same location. So they will carry some of these large particles back to their colony to feed their larvae. But what these adult ants can actually ingest are liquids, in this case, oil. So here you're looking at Argentine ant feeding on sugar water. After ingesting this sugar water, she will temporarily store that liquid into certain part of their gut called crop. And she's not going to drink all of that and then use it for own energy production. What she's going to do, she's going to bring it back and share it with other nestmates in the colony. So she's regurgitating back to uh, other nestmates so she can get food as well. So this crop is called social stomach for that reasons. In some ant species, those crop and the crop got really um, enlarged and then become important storage organs for entire colony, not just a few other new nestmates. So in this particular example, honeypot ants, these individuals are actually storing the large quantities of honeydew that have been collected by nestmates over the good time of the season, flowering season or green season part of the year, and to survive through more dry and more barren type period of their seasons. And this picture shows the two Argentine ants or three Argentine ants are exchanging their liquid food. And this type of liquid food exchange behaviors are defined as trophallaxis. Tropho means food and laxis means exchange. So literally it means the food exchange between organisms. So considering all this, the baiting is much more targeted approach of ant management than the use of insecticide sprays. Insecticidal compounds will be ingested by the target insects, and then insecticides will stay inside of their body, cause mortality over time. The baiting has been tested in urban settings by our lab and others, and the overall finding indicates that baiting can be a very effective tool for maintenance services when ant number is not that extremely high. So once we get the ant numbers down with some other more dramatic or more effective or more impactful strategies like target the contact-based spray insecticides, after that initial application, we can rely on bait to keep the ant numbers down throughout the season, just to prevent the invasion, indoor infestations by ants, etc. So that had been tested. That idea had been tested in multiple studies, and seems to be pretty promising in that way. So in this particular study, we tested this boric acid gel bait, hydrogel bait, to use it as the maintenance service tools for Argentinian. So initially, we treated the houses with insecticide spray that contains fipronil, and then a few weeks later, we followed up with boric acid and bait to keep the N numbers low. So as you can see in this final graph here, we kept the N number, we kind of knocked them down quite a bit initially with insecticide spray, which had a pheromone adjuvant added, and then keep the N numbers low throughout the season by using N bait only. So that's the sort of like backgrounds to support these two birational approaches that we encouraged the pest management professionals to adopt in their professional routes. So use of this pheromone adjuvant and combined with insecticide spray for heavy infestation at the beginning of the heavy infestation season. And then after that, just rely on bait for maintaining to keep the N numbers low for maintenance services. So idea was, instead of doing this repeated use of spray over the season without being able to get complete control of Argentinian populations, how about using spray combined with adjuvant to really increase their impact at the beginning of the season? And then once the number goes down, we keep that number low with the use of baits. So these were some of the objectives we had in this alliance project with pest management professionals. First of all, we had to form the alliance team by recruiting the pest control company members as well as pesticide manufacturers who are interested in assisting and participating. And also we had to develop the effective low impact protocols that fits business model of existing participating pest management professional companies. And then we asked them to implement that strategy in their actual route to demonstrate the effectiveness of that developed low impact protocol. And we also plan to promote the low impact IPM strategies to other participating and other interested professionals. So these were the alliance team members we were able to recruit for this project. As the professional pest control company participant, we had Clark Pest Control, we had Pestec, and we had 5 companies, manufacturing companies, as a team member. We had Sutera, MGK, BSF, Syngenta, and Enview. So these companies were happy to provide the product that could be implemented into our low impact IPM protocols, particularly the bait product and also the pheromone adjuvant product. So we had a lot of meetings with participating companies to develop that core protocol requirements and the strategies that the company will actually implement in the field. We asked the company to secure 2 separate residential service routes, so we can use one route as a low impact route, and then they can use the other route as a standard route, so we can make comparisons whether low impact route is better than standard route, or are they similar in terms of pesticide use and also customer satisfaction. And so we collected this type of data, insecticide use patterns. We wanted to know what kind of insecticides are used and how much. And also we wanted to know callback rates, which is a great indication where that indicate that showed that whether our strategies are working or not. And also we collected cost information expressed in time and the amount of material that were used. So in 2023, the company identified this particular location, Temecula and Murrieta in Southern California, for field demonstration study. And this protocol kind of shows what they did for their standard route and what they did for low impact route. So the big difference here, they implemented pheromone adjuvant for spray insecticide they used in low impact route. And also they implemented some amount of bait applications in the low impact route. And standard route didn't have that. Company was able to secure 75 or 70 houses for conventional and low impact IPM routes. So these are pretty significant number of accounts where this demonstration was conducted. The study was done in June, between June and October in 2023. So we kind of obtain all the informations about number of applications that were made per different insecticidal compound. So this is for standard route. So we got, this highest bar. This is from the insecticide spray that contains alpha-cypermethrin, which is one of the well-established neurotoxin for insect control. For low impact, we didn't have that alpha-cypermethrin, but we had this other product called the dinotefran spray, but that was used in conjunction with pheromone adjuvant. So we also calculate the total amount applied based on the product quantity. So for standard route, this spray was very generously used. For low impact, again, this product was most commonly used. If you compare the data between standard route and low impact route, you can kind of see the huge amount of differences between these two routes in terms of total quantity of insecticide used. So that was promising. We can also calculate how much amount this product are used per applications by dividing the number of this total amount applied by total number of applications. Same type of the data sets for low impact. But one of the interesting findings we made from 2023 study was in the callback rate. If you look at the left side of this graph here, all callbacks, this blue bar is for low impact. The red bar is for standard route. We got the lower callback rates for low impact compared to standard route. If I only separate the ant-related callbacks, that was quite significantly different between low impact route and standard route. More specifically, low impact had much lower ant callback rates compared to standard route. So this was pretty encouraging finding from 2023 study. We also look at the cost-related information. We found that in terms of time they needed to make application were pretty comparable between standard route and low impact route. The amount of expenses or the product-related expenses were also quite similar between standard route and low impact route. But in 2023 study, the bait was used in very small quantities. So we emphasize that aspect, the use of bait for maintenance services for 2024 field demonstrations. So the company revised their protocol for low impact for 2024. They are repeating in the field demonstration study in 2024 season. But as we are emphasizing the use of bait to manage the ant around the houses, though one of the important question is where to put the ant bait. This is important question for professionals because they have to train their technicians. Technicians are not, insect biologists. They're not ant specialists. They're not insect behavioralists. So there should be a way to educate and train their technicians so that the bait will be placed in a right manner to really maximize the use out of that bait. And it's an important question also because the bait products are typically more expensive than spray product if you're considering the costs that are needed to treat unit area. If you think about the typical houses, there are so many potential locations the ant bait can be placed, but it's not realistic to ask the company to use 10 ant gel bait tubes or 20 ant gel bait tubes to treat all those potential locations you can imagine, because the ant gel baits are not cheap. If you look at the label instructions of some existing bait product, it goes like this: place bait on, into, or adjacent to structures where ants are observed or suspected of ant activities. In other product says, locate areas around building where ants are seen trailing, or place the base stations near the foundation or where ant trails are found. So a lot of these languages or information, these label instructions, give me an impression that they're assuming that we know exactly where the ants are going to be or where the ants are. But knowing where the ants are not very easy, especially for technicians that are visiting and servicing many houses throughout the day, especially the ant peak seasons, which is hot time of the day, hot time of the year in California. So the question was, is there any way to place this bait most strategically without even searching for trailing ants or the ants that are trailing? So in UC Riverside campus, we decided to conduct some small, interesting study to answer that question. We first identified these 5 location types that could be found around structures. These location types are characterized by single characteristics. So the first, lawn, and second, concrete, and third, dumpster and trash can site, and tree, and finally, vegetation, bush. So vegetation, bush, these are the plant that doesn't have a trunk, unlike the tree. So here are some pictures. This is L, stand for lawn. By the way, the little white square sitting on the lawn, that's the N monitor that we used for this particular study, which is basically a cotton square that is soaked in sugar water solution. So once the ants find it, they will stay on it to drink from it. Next, concrete, the DC, and then D stand for dumpster or trash can site, and tree stand for the base of the tree, and V stand for vegetation and bush. And then we found the other 5 location types. And these are characterized by the presence of interfaces of 2 different surface types. So LC is the interface between lawn and concrete. SC is the interface between soil and concrete. MC stands for the interface between mulch and concrete. BS stands for the interface between building and soil interface. And then the BC finally is the interface between building and concrete. So here we're looking at LC, lawn and concrete interface, SC, soil and concrete interface, MC, mulch and concrete, BC, building and concrete. Building is a vertical surfaces, by the way. And then what we did, we set out those end monitors in those interfaces and different surface types. And we came back in an hour, and then we counted the number of Argentine ants on the square. This graph shows our findings. The highest number of ants were found in LC, and it was pretty consistent across our repeated study. Lawn and concrete interface is the best site, and it provides some kind of structural guidelines for ants, so they love to trail in their locations. And this surface type is also pretty commonly found in residential settings such as landscape curvings. The next, we found highest ant activities relatively consistent and activities at the base of the tree. In this case, this kind of made some sense because the trees had honeydew producing insects on it in the canopy. So ants were trailing up the tree to get those food sources. Finally, dumpster site also had relatively high number of ants, but we saw the highest variation levels in that particular site, which means that depending upon what we have in the dumpster can or trash can, there might be strongly trailing ants going into the going into the trash can, but in other times there will be no trail at all if the trash can is empty. So dumpster size seems to be more or less hit or miss in this type of applications. Back to lawn and concrete interface, these are really common structural features that you might find around homes between concrete, patio, and lawn, or between lawn and concrete curvings, in driveways as well. Maybe some type of microclimate conditions, preferred conditions in those areas really make the ants to prefer that area for trailing and foraging. Maybe there is a little bit high moisture condition there. Maybe the temperature is slightly lower in that areas, even during hot time of the day. We think that the absence of vegetation is probably also helping ants to choose their location for heavy trailing activities. Most importantly, maybe that the microclimate conditions or environmental conditions that are preferred by the ants in that location is also probably helpful in keeping the ant bait last longer and also keep the ant bait palatable for a longer period of time. And those locations, for example, this driveway, there is a concrete and lawn interface. And that driveway interface is very difficult to treat with insecticide application while avoiding any potential runoff issues. So that's a great location to treat using bait, which is inherently more target-specific strategy for managing ants. So in 2024, we're continuing our field applications and demonstrations. In this year, the company came up with these 4 different regions. The total 20 houses, they improved their protocol with pheromone adjuvant and more ant bait. We're finalizing our field demonstration site studies. So these are some of the findings so far. We are collecting insecticide quantity that are used. We're continue collecting callback rates. to make sure the new strategy, low impact strategy, is comparable to standard route in terms of customer satisfaction as well as the expenses. So the future plan is that we want to conduct the customer satisfaction survey to make sure that customers are happy, regardless we're using low impact IPM or standard route in terms of pest control expectation. And also we want to conduct economic analysis with cost information we will be collecting and finalizing towards the end of the season. And one of the things that I have been thinking about is that the commercial bait that are available for ant control has a lot of room for future improvements in terms of delivery. These are some of the common ant gel bait products that are commercially available, but these packagings are not really ideal or optimized for outdoor ant control purposes. Especially these bait tubes are small, and these are almost identical to cockroach ant, the cockroach bait tubes. But if you think about the technician that are serving in the residential settings outdoor, if they have this, they have to bend over every single time when they apply ant gel bait in the ground. So something like this, like bait gun extender and something, some improvements in bait design, repackaging them in a certain way may help to adoption of this type of gel bait by professionals. The other issue with liquid bait is that a lot of these commercial liquid baits require bait stations like this, and the companies sometimes have a hard time to maintain and purchase and maintain and store these large quantities of these bait stations. So we are developing in the lab, and we also tested in the field too. We are developing the novel way of delivering the liquid bait without the need of bait stations by using this hydrogel compound that is very effective in terms of absorbing the liquid and then releasing it to foraging ant as a liquid bait. And this would allow us to be able to use or apply the liquid bait as if they are the granular bait. So here are some bottom lines. Developing low impact strategy for ant control is possible, and it can be economically feasible. Ant management can be possible without repeated use of insecticide sprays, including pyrethroids, which is one of the common insecticide product that are found in many different products. And use of pheromone adjuvant will be helpful to reduce the callback rates, especially when it's combined with low non-repellent insecticide sprays. Bait can be a useful tool for maintenance visits, especially when the N number are initially reduced by the use of effective insecticide spray. And low impact protocols may take a little bit more time, considering the bait applications will require a little bit more time, at least with current technology of bait applications. To get the most out of the baiting, strategic placement of bait will be important. Pay attention to concrete and lawn interfaces in particular, and further development of ant bait and their repackaging them in a way that really facilitate the adoption by the professionals will really help to widespread the adoption of ant baiting for ant control in and around structures. So I'd like to thank you for the collaborators and my co-PIs for some of this project, and also our industry partners, as well as the funding agencies, California DPR. So with that, I can take any questions if you have.
Thank you, Shay. That was some great information.